Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers, 97.3 ESPN.com. Sixers and Pistons tonight. But let's look back, Paul. Everybody's kind of looking back at Simmons' weekend. If you're on the Broad side, you're like, man, why can't he do that more? And then if you're someone who's a little bit more rational, less realistic, or more realistic, you would say, I don't need him to do it more. But if you can, if they need you, I know it's in there.
Yeah, I tend to be on that side of things. It's what we talked about before, where it's Joel Embiid is having an MVP-type season. Seth Curry's having the best season of his career so far. Tobias Harris is playing his best basketball, his most efficient basketball as a Sixer. Shake Milton has been excellent off the bench. He struggled a little bit the other night, but in general has been very good off the bench. So, yeah, I mean, when Ben Simmons is called upon when he needs to be, he can do it. He's proven he can do it, but he doesn't need to do it every night because those other guys are doing so well. Now, a night like tonight, if Joel Embiid is not available, yes, this is the kind of game where you would like to see him step up a little bit more and maybe take on more of the scoring load because of that. But in general, I do think it's a matter of, yes, it's good that he can reach into his bag and do that occasionally. And I know he said specifically in the Celtics game, he saw something basically that the Celtics were kind of not expecting him to do it. So that's why he did it. So yeah, I think it's not something he needs to do every night, but when his number is called and they need him to do it, it's there.
Right. And as you wrote, that he's not taking outside shots, but it doesn't matter because one of the things that matters, I guess to me has mattered more over the years is, all right, if you're not going to shoot outside, I'm not going to sit there and nitpick on you, but then you got to get to the line. Doesn't get to the line enough. He got to the line, 12 times the other night. But I thought it was what he said after the game. It feels like he is getting more confident stepping to the line. That's really the first time that he's really addressed getting to the line and feeling, that he's capable of doing it.
Right. I was actually going to ask him about it because you see it when you're at the arena, him and Sam Cassell every night. It's a shooting routine they go through, and it's different. It's different from what it was in the past, and it's he takes different floor spots and shoots from different floor spots, but then he always goes back to the free throw line after each one. So he'll take a bunch of corner threes, then he'll go to the free throw line again. Then he'll take some wing threes, then he'll go to the free throw line again. So it's something that he is clearly really emphasizing. And Mike, if you go back to last year when we had that really good stretch for 20 games, there was a 15-ish game stretch where he shot 75% from the line. And he was getting there 8 times a game. Well, over the last 5, he's at 73.5%, and he's around 7 attempts per game. That's a great range. If he's taking 8 to 10 free throws a game and shooting over 70%, that's for him. That's terrific. I mean, for most guys, that's pretty good. For him, that's excellent, all things considered. And then the bigger thing to me, and I wrote it as well, is the turnovers. Way less. I think he's had averaged less than 3 over the last 3 games. Before that, he was over 6 the 3 prior games. And someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but since halftime of that Memphis game, I have not seen him pick up his dribble in the middle of the paint, turn around blindly, and pass to no one. I don't think he has done that since that Memphis game. And I sort of wonder if maybe Doc Rivers and Sam Cassell had a little talk with him about doing that, and he hasn't done it. And it's been that to me. Those are the 2 biggest things to me of what I liked about his game recently is the free throws and the cutting down to the turnovers.
Not that I'm truly shocked by his performance defensively on Jeremy Grant, but can you expand a little bit on that? I mean, this guy, first off, Jeremy Grant's now a 25 points per game kind of guy, which is crazy in itself, but what Ben Simmons did to him was just unreal.
Yeah, listen, to me, he's a defensive player of the year candidate. He's got to be. He was already all first team defense last year. You look at the versatility in which he guards, guarding, against the Celtics, he guards Kemba sometimes. Sometimes he guards Jaylen Brown. There are times where he's guarding more power forwards. The versatility of his defense, I think, to me, is the most impressive thing. He might be the most versatile defender in the entire NBA when you look at it from that kind of realm. And even Doc Rivers admitted against the Celtics when Jaylen Brown put up 40, he probably waited a little bit too long to put Ben on him that night. But I think that's how good he can be. And I think Doc kind of walks this line of, do I put him on the best player right away? Do I wait a little bit? Do I kind of have him let him roam, almost play that free safety role because he can be so disruptive and he's so good. He's such a good knack for getting in passing lanes and kind of anticipating that and coming up with steals. So it's kind of a tightrope that Doc Rivers has walked against the Pistons because, as you mentioned, Jeremy Grant is having such a good year, and he's really their only true perimeter threat, consistent perimeter threat when Derrick Rose is out of the lineup. So, yeah, put him on him from the stretch, and we saw, I can't remember what he finished, but it was ugly, and he had like 11 points, and yeah, and I mean that's to me that's what Ben Simmons is capable of, and he could stand toe to toe with any player in the league defensively.
So what's more frustrating for a guy like you, Broads? Watching Simmons do nothing for 3 quarters and then taking over the 4th quarter, or showing that he can score 20 on a night where he's good throughout the game?
What's more frustrating? I think it's when he doesn't do it for 3.5 and then he explodes and does it for 2 minutes and somehow scores 8 points. It's like, why are you doing it now? Why can't you do that forever?
Right, because Paul, like the game on Friday night, which we almost forget because he was so good Saturday, they might lose both of those games without him. And it shows that, like, they're good enough without him scoring, but if they need him to score, he can. And they don't win those games without the way he plays defense. So it shows how important he is.
Yeah, and that's what Doc Rivers has kind of been trying to stress to everyone is like, listen, this guy's value is not scoring the basketball. Like we're really limiting what his impact is on a game in its totality when we just focus on the fact that he's not scoring or is scoring or whatever, because he does so many other things. The guy I keep coming back to, and I think it's part of it is he was the number 1 overall pick, and not only was he the number 1 overall pick, he came out, he's compared to LeBron James and Magic Johnson. Who can live up to that? I mean, those are literally 2 of the greatest basketball players to ever walk the earth. So when you're automatic, like that's the expectation coming in. Like how many guys actually live up to that? Like LeBron is one of the few that was kind of ushered in as like the next one, and he was that, and he lived up to it. That doesn't happen that often. So if he is, and this is what I see him as a better version of Draymond Green. If he can be that, when you have Joel Embiid playing the way he is, when you have a Seth Curry, when you have a Tobias Harris, when you have those other pieces, if he can play that kind of elevated Draymond role, it can work. I mean, there is a formula there where it can all make sense. And he can pick and choose the spots when he sees opportunities where maybe the offense is struggling or where the defense is giving him a certain look and he can attack. And I also think, there's other factors too. It's not to make excuses, but the guy had knee surgery in the offseason. They already had a shortened offseason because of everything going on around the league. He's got a new coach, a new system. And I do think that Doc Rivers and Sam Cassell are asking him to do different things than what Brett Brown was asking him to do. So I think it's all a factor. And I think right now the formula works where he's doing his thing and, Joel Embiid's doing his thing. And I think it all makes sense right now, and it's all working right now.
Well, let me ask you guys, Paul, I'll start with you, and Broads, I want to hear what you have to say about this too, but having Curry back, how did that change Ben's game? Because, Ben played well early, then he had a struggle, and I kind of said, well, Curry's not there, of course. And then people say, well, he shouldn't need Curry to be that good, but he does, sorry. Why does Curry help change things, and did you see a change?
Just the threat of Seth Curry alone, especially with the way how good he's been this year shooting the basketball, it's just more. It's more space. It's more space for everybody. It's not just for Ben Simmons. It's more space for Joel Embiid. It's more space for Tobias Harris. So I think, Seth Curry's presence 100% it helps Ben Simmons, and also, I think we can all agree that Seth Curry's off the dribble game is better than we kind of all thought. He's kind of exceeded expectations in that regard. And that's a threat too, because now you can use Ben Simmons as a screener and use him in a pick and roll, and you could do dribble handoffs. Like Seth Curry's his skill set as an elite shooter, and then B, as a point guard and secondary ball handler. I think it takes so much pressure off Ben Simmons offensively that, I think it makes a huge difference. And, you could say what you want, but like last year, look what the offense looked like with Josh Richardson and Al Horford. And now you just sub those two guys out, and look how much better Joel Embiid's playing. Look how much better Tobias Harris is playing. And now you're seeing it with Ben Simmons. So I think it's like not a black and white thing. I think it's an overall context thing. And I do think ultimately, yes, Seth Curry just makes this offense better because of his skills, especially when you compare it with the skills of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think something that stood out to me last game is he went 6 for 11 from the field and did not make one three-pointer, but still had 14 points. So it just shows you, just him being a threat, as Paul kind of mentioned, and he doesn't even be knocking them down. If he's missing his shots, he can still put his fingerprints on the game. So he's extremely important to what this team can bring.
No, I totally. And it's again, it's just a matter of, I think what Daryl Morey did this offseason was just look at it and say, okay, those pieces last year did not fit offensively. What do I do to make them better? What do I do to make it better? What do I do to make Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris's life easier? And he went out and he literally traded for the best percentage three-point shooter in the NBA currently in Seth Curry. And then he also got a guy in Danny Green who is a much bigger threat from the outside than, say, an Al Horford. So, yeah, I think that was Daryl Morey's goal, was to do that, was to just complement those two guys better, and so far so good.
Now we were talking about having Curry, and now it changes in Simmons' game. Like, was that something that you noticed over the weekend?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you can just tell it's just the natural spacing. Yeah. It goes back to kind of like when we said.
But I think the biggest thing is that it gives Simmons a easier path, more room to get to do what he wants to do, which is get to the basket. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. Now, Paul, when you look at this Sunday's, their game was a Saturday against the Pistons. How professional was it to you? Because one thing that I noticed was, I felt that was your standard game in the past where Embiid would be a scratch. I mean, he was holding his tailbone against the Boston Celtics, right? And he's putting up 40 points. It was amazing. That would have been your standard, take a day off, we'll lose, whatever, we'll get back on Monday and play them. But they all played, Tobias, Ben, and Joel, and they won. So, I just think that is a big step in the direction of these guys as veterans.
Definitely. No, definitely, bros. And it's one of those games that, in the past, even if Joel Embiid would have played, they still might have lost. I still, like, the biggest, example of that last year was Christmas Day. They whooped the Milwaukee Bucks at home. Then they go on the road against Orlando and lose to the Magic. And they were at full strength. Everybody played that game. That to me is the difference between what you see now and this year. Now, look, I mean, Detroit has the worst record in the NBA. So some people might look at it and be like, man, it took, you had to fight and claw just to beat the Detroit Pistons. But listen, that's a game they might not have won in the past. That is a professional win, because it's not – I don't care who you're playing. It is not easy to play the Boston Celtics 2 games in a row. And I know they didn't have Jason Tatum, but they are still a tough team and an extremely well-coached team. To beat them 2 games in a row and then go on the road in Detroit on a Saturday night and take care of business and just win, do enough to win that game, that is a mature professional win. And Ben Simmons touched on that after the game too. He said, listen, that was last year when stuff like that happened. Guys get better, guys mature. And I think that's the biggest thing is it's a sign of maturity. And that's what you saw down the stretch. It was Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons kind of putting the team on their back and just, again, scratching and clawing their way to a win. That was not easy. I know Detroit is the worst team in the NBA record-wise, but they fought, and they actually shot the hell out of the ball that night, Detroit, which isn't typical for them. But I agree, a very, very professional win.
All right, Paul Hudrick, of course, Sixers tonight. We don't know what Embiid's status is going to be, but as you wrote, another ho-hum big night for him. And, you mentioned MVP. Everybody's kind of looking at him, but it is obvious that this is we're getting a different Joel Embiid. And with this Joel Embiid, I'm wondering if now our expectation, you come in, you're playing a schedule, and you're doing, most people thought the Sixers were maybe a 6-5-4 seed. Watching this Embiid, does he cause a shift in your expectations?
Yes, he does. And it also, to me, it puts the onus on Daryl Morey because, he's 26 and that is young, but he's a big guy. And he's a big guy with an injury history, with foot problems, with back problems, with knee problems. And you don't want to, it's probably the time to strike. If you're going to make a move, now's the time to make a move, I think, because of how great he has been. And because he is on an MVP type trajectory, I would say, yes, it definitely raises the expectation level, when you're just looking at this team as it is currently constructed. But to me, it should raise the expectation level around that trade deadline that Daryl Morey should be making a move or two to put this team in a position to perhaps go to the Eastern Conference and beyond, Eastern Conference Finals and beyond, because I think he is playing at that high of a level. He's been that dominant So I think, you got to strike while this iron's hot.
Last thing we'll get into, because you wrote about it, and I think it's a good point, is professional wins, the way that they're getting these wins. We kind of talked about it. You win that game against Boston, you beat them twice, back-to-back on the road. Typically, that's the game that's like a built-in loss for them. They didn't play great. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing to the whole way, but they found out a way to get a win against a bad Detroit team.
Yeah, and I think that's a combination of everything. I think it's a combination of Doc Rivers coming in here and really, holding these guys accountable. And I think what I've noticed, at least with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and talking to them, they've both been way more expansive than they've ever been, way more thoughtful with their responses to the media. I know that's not the be-all, end-all, and most people don't really care about that, but there's just all these little signs of growth with those two. And I think a part of it, it's not just that Doc Rivers is a really good motivator and a really good leader of men. I think it's that, look, their coach got fired. And I think that puts pressure on you. They brought in Daryl Morey, who's one of the best executives in the NBA. That puts pressure on you. When you make moves to get guys, that puts more pressure on you. And I think they're not numb to that. They recognize that. They recognize that this is kind of their time to strike. They're both entering their primes. They're both stars, meaning, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. So the onus is on them to really get it together and figure it out. And I think that it's almost like it's, to me, everything that's happened over the past year has accelerated their growth in a positive way. And I think you're seeing it with those little things off the court and then on the court with a win like what you saw on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, too, is that you're seeing Ben and Joel interacting more. It seems that they do have a new appreciation for each other almost.
Definitely. That was kind of the theme on Friday night was they're kind of like, for lack of a better term, their bromance now kind of blossoming. And look, to me, I mean, from when I've been around them, the relationship was never bad. It really, truly, to me, it was never bad. No real animosity, but I don't think they were ever particularly close. They do have very different personalities. They're different kind of guys. They are interested in different things off the court. Now you look at Joel Embiid, who has, a longtime girlfriend and a kid now. Ben Simmons is an eligible bachelor. It's just they are different. But I think, and Doc Rivers that's just been a big emphasis with him, is just they have to talk and they have to communicate and they have to see things on the court. And, when you're in the arena, again, when you see them, they're talking on the sideline more than I've ever seen them talk to each other. Joel Embiid in his ear constantly, Ben Simmons taking it all in and actually listening and absorbing it. And it's just such a positive sign of growth. And they both said it after the game. And Joel Embiid even said, he's like, it's just different. I can't explain it. We're like, it's just, we're on the same page. We're seeing things, we're communicating more and it's helping us on the court. And he said, it's been fun. It's been the most fun they've had playing together. So that seems like it could only be a good thing going forward to have those guys kind of build that relationship. And again, I think it's so many other factors that have all kind of come into that to make it to this, where their relationship is the best it's ever been.
All right, he's Paul Hudrick, and, of course, the Sixers tonight against the Pistons. Wednesday, they have the Lakers here in Philly and the Timberwolves on Friday. So another busy week, 3 games this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Hear them all right here on 97.3 ESPN. They also have a game on Sunday night as well. I think that's against the Pacers. So a busy week for Philly. We'll see if Embiid plays. At Paul Hudrick, follow him and check out his takeaways from the Sixers weekend right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Paul, we'll talk to you soon, pal.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.